Hi everybody, welcome to another XX Files with me, Leah, and I'm joined by Sue.
Hi, Leah.
And we're also joined by our friend Bella, not her real name, who is a fellow women's rights activist, works in a large organisation and is absolutely sick to death of DEI, which we're going to talk about and go into. And first, we're going to talk about our wonderful Speakers Corner that we just had, which Bella attended. Sue obviously was there. It was good, wasn't it?
Yeah, considering that it started off like it did, it did turn out very well.
Bella, you've been to nearly all of our Speakers Corners. How did you find this one? It was a bit different.
Was different. It was at another location, which is just another stunning Brisbane location. And good morning, Leah. Good morning, Sue. It's always a pleasure to spend time with like-minded, strong women. It's just absolute pleasure. Yes, it was a beautiful location, slightly windy day, and just a stunning area of Brisbane. Unfortunately, we couldn't attend it at the spot that we were going to set up in because we had the usual people to greet us with loving arms.
This is where we're supposed to be having our Speakers Corner, but we've got friends here set up to shut us up. So we've got police here to try to ensure that women can speak. So we'll see what happens.
So we moved to a different spot, assisted with the police, who I must say quite a great respect and relationship we are developing there. So good day.
Yeah, it was quite strange, and I think it's because we changed locations. Where we were outside of Parliament House, there wasn't a lot of traffic. So they basically have left us alone, I think, ever since what happened to you, Leah, last year, that bulking great man. And I think they were happy with us in Speaker's Corner, so they basically left us alone.
Yeah, we didn't get much trouble when we were there at all, apart from that one time, and a couple of other events that were quite funny, really. The punks against TERFs. But yeah, when Brisbane's worst transvestite clocked me in public, he couldn't help himself. He had to come over and scream and shout in my face. But yeah, we haven't had anything like that since, thank God. But this time, it was quite weird to show up and them all be there already set up.
Well, Kaylee and I arrived at about 11:45, and we were starting at 12:30. And Kaylee, being an ex-police officer, she looked across and she said, "They're in the park," straight away. And I'm looking and I could see people sitting there, but I had to take a second and I thought, yeah, they're bloody trans activists. So they were going to make sure that they would stop us from going ahead.
They looked, I mean, what they were wearing like communist signs on their dresses, and they had a big PA system with music blaring out. It was very strange. I mean, I don't know how these people don't get done for breach of the peace, because no one could enjoy that park that day.
No, but you've got to have a permit, and it's got to be what's it called? It's got to be a peaceful gathering, not peaceful. What really astounded me, Leah, is when you and Narissa went down to the police station and came back. I think were there 4 police that were talking to us. They were over the other side of the park, and they're so blatant. They all got up and came over and just plonked themselves down. They are so blatant. They're such a hateful group of people. That astounded me in front of the police. So the police could actually see what they were up to.
Yeah, well, this is it. It does give the police a chance to see what these people are really like.
Yeah.
You know, because you can hear the trans women are women thing and trans rights are human rights. You can hear it a million times, but when you actually are face to face with these people and you see what they're saying, what they're demanding, they were shouting on their PA system at us, telling us to fuck off, go home,
Yeah.
TERFs, you know, nothing that we haven't ever heard before. But, you know, no one could enjoy that park that day because we were on the other side and, you know, they kind of, I thought they drowned us out, but the sound actually came out okay on our video. But
Yeah.
it was hard to hear what the speakers were saying because these people were so loud.
Yeah, they were, but it didn't drown out the PA system, so the footage came out quite well.
Yeah,
but
it was good. And the thing that gets me as well is that our Minister for Women would have been on their side.
Yeah, exactly. But all the tourists that were staying in the building behind us, that's part of the casino. They own that, and that's where the so people coming out of there and walking through the park, they just, I think, they looked horrified and actually stopped and sat there and listened to us.
Yeah, I got a few thumbs up and a few blokes. It was a couple of blokes that said, "Keep doing what you're doing." You know, we agree.
Yeah. So they think that the public's on their side, and they can, even animals don't behave like that. I was going to say rabid animals, but animals don't behave like that. So they think all the public is on their side, and, you know, and the public are going, yes, yes, go for them, go for the Turks.
Do they though?
No, they don't.
Think that everyone's on their side.
Yeah, that's what they believe.
But so, do they though? Because if they did, surely they wouldn't have to shout and be like they are.
But all they do is show them up for what they are. So if any of the public are sort of sitting on the fence, they're not going to go with them. No, people just are horrified by their behaviour. They're not horrified with our behaviour, yet they claim we're the violent ones. But violence is words, or words are violence.
Yet they can shout at us from across the other side of a park on a PA system, telling us to fuck off and go home.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought your introduction, though, Leah, was fantastic, the way you basically told them where to go. You know, when you were speaking and then they started off that FUCK, you know, and your daughter, you know, wanting to protect your daughter.
Yeah.
And your son as well.
Yeah. No, that hulking great dude that was in a dress on the microphone, demanding access to my daughter's spaces. I'm sorry, no. Hell will freeze over until I agree or accept that. And I know we all feel the same.
Yeah, but you had a baby in your arms, so talking like that with the baby that you want to protect, it was really, really good. And I think, yeah, like, it's just that these are the ones they're after, the young ones. And they're the ones that need to be protected from these mongrels.
Well, let's talk a bit about how this has come through so heavily and how it's just entrenched in everything that you see these days. Bella, can you give us a little bit of detail about what you see on a daily basis?
What I see is organisations, academia and government departments bringing in division within their staff, pitting some staff members as being more important, more of a specialised group of society based on either who they're sleeping with, where they were born, what their genetics are, what ability or not that they might have, what their beliefs are, all the things that we have laws to protect against separating people in society for, dividing people in society for. So at the heart of it, what I see are three main acts that DEI just
Can we just clarify?
Stomps all over.
Just need to clarify that DEI policy, which is diversity, equity and inclusion, this is how governments and organisations have pushed through gender ideology under the banner of DEI policies, and that's what Bella's talking about today. Is just wanted to clarify that, because sometimes people don't understand that's how it's being pushed through.
Absolutely, absolutely. That is how they are stomping all over the Sex Discrimination Act. That's how they are stomping all over the Privacy Act and the Workplace Health and Safety Act. So safety, safeguarding, that's primarily why I'm here, is safeguarding. And DEI enables staff to be placed in discriminatory and unsafe situations. So specifically when we are talking about trans. And it also discriminates on, it raises mediocrity over meritocracy. So an example of this would be with the trans and women, where say you have a position like a Minister for Women or a woman's role that is appointed for women's sports. For example, under DEI, a man can hold that position. But if it's just based on merit and experience, well, you'd have to say the experience and merit of a woman for a woman's position would enable that only a woman could hold that role. So you don't need DEI.
Yeah, this is what we've seen with that dude that was appointed like the head of an endometriosis charity.
There is a concern that as a trans activist now being a CEO of an endometriosis charity for women, that you will not preserve the importance of things like the word woman. 10%, you say, of those assigned female at birth suffer from these awful disease. Is the word you're looking for there, woman?
I look at women, but I also look at the issue of trans men and non-binary people. You know, there's something like 5,500 trans men who has endometriosis who probably feel absolutely, that's in the UK, that feels rather left out. There's also non-binary people. And it's just
but the vast majority are women.
Yes, of course, the vast majority. But does that mean that we should leave behind trans men, Emma?
Absolutely not the case. The charity can more than cater. I mean, unless it's a specialist charity and you want to go down that particular route, you tell me, can more than cater for it. But that's what I'm trying to explain to you. There's two different arguments. There's the argument that you don't have to be the same as your service user to represent them. You've made that argument. There are countless examples. But there is a different argument about your specific appointment, Steph, which is a concern that as a trans activist, as someone who has been accused of using inflammatory language in the past, such as saying the word TERF at people who are also feminists, that you are not the right person to represent a women's charity.
The dude who thinks that he's a woman that's just been made the manager of a women's football club.
Yeah.
It's just happening all over. Well, it's always women who lose out.
It's also even beauty contests.
Yeah.
Things like that.
When the ugliest dude wins a female beauty contest.
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous.
Well, let's have a look at how it can also be serious. You know, beauty contests, like, I don't even know where to start with that one. You know, that's like back in the 60s, I know my mother told me that, you know, they had the kids' beauty contests. Like let's just not. Let's look at this though. When we're dividing people into categories, how about that article in the last week where it could be New South Wales or Victoria, probably one or the other of those, where they've dedicated housing. Now, housing's a little bit of an issue in Australia at the moment. Dedicated housing for trans women. Okay, now let's have a look at that. In the middle of a domestic violence crisis where women are being turned away from refuges because they can't, the government says you are not allowed to house another woman in that, where they're cutting funding from refuges that aren't going to allow men who say they're women into those traumatized women's refuges where some around the world have been raped, and they're giving housing to men who identify, to AGPs. Okay, let's just get down to it. They are giving entitled, probably narcissistic men housing. What the hell, Australia? Who is in our government running the show?
I'm pretty sure that was in New South Wales, and it is ridiculous, like prioritising men when they're, like you say, Bella, there's women and children because of domestic violence that are seeking housing, and then it goes to men. So just because they say they're a woman.
It's it is
let's face it. There should be no homelessness in Australia, but you know, the prioritising of men that say they're women is just ludicrous.
Yes, and you know, trans is a category of DEI, and so that just has to be, they are inextricably connected. So the whole thing has to be withdrawn from all government policy. DEI must die. It has to come out of all government policy, all organisations. The whip and stick behind it, where you don't get funding, like in the women's refuges, that has to be abolished. That's abhorrent. That is coercive. It's just like in organisations that are now policies. I was listening to a space only in the last week or so, where a lady, I think she mentioned she was from the ACT, had said that she's glad she's left her particular organisation because she would be in breach of the code of conduct by not complying with the compelled speech of pronouns. So how is that being kind to staff, to teaching them to lie? And that's what's happening in our schools. That's what's happening in our universities. We are teaching children to lie. And isn't that one of the tenets in life? You know, isn't that a basic truth? You tell your children, don't lie.
They're told that they don't know they're lying. So they think it's the truth. So, I mean, and which is wrong. It's just as wrong as forcing us to lie, to make out to these kids, this is what the truth is. You can be 112 genders, that you could be body, that sort of thing. So they don't know they're lying, the kids. The older kids, but the really young ones, because they seem to want to get to them from, from childcare age.
Oh, yes, very, very, very young. I don't know. I've raised a few children, and I don't know about that. When kids are young, they don't seem to have, very young, they don't seem to have any filter. I do remember, for example, when I'd just come out of hospital with one of my children, and my older one was still, you know, like toddlerish type age, where they've just started speaking, and they say what they see. So we pulled up, and a lady was crossing the road at a, you know, zebra crossing. Zebra, you know, black and white crossings. We don't need these multicolored ones that the horses can't go over. And the windows were down. You know, it was like we weren't wealthy with the electronic, and back in the day it was flash to have a car with electronic windows. So the windows were down. It's Australia, it's hot. And a rather large lady with a tummy, you know, was going across the crossing, and you know, my daughter yelled at, you know, in a sort of louder voice, you know, lady with baby, lady's got baby. She looked over, and she obviously wasn't feeling very flattered at that comment, but it's just an example of children say what they see. So I would have to say, once they've been brainwashed, like with any ideology, and you see that in other countries too, they go for the children. The trans go for the children. All ideology go for the children, and not out of love. They go out of children because they want to brainwash the children into their viewpoint because it validates them and their existence as adults. You know, it's a real thing because, look, the kids are born that way, right? So they're not doing it because they love the kids. They're doing it for validation for themselves and for their cause. Of course they're not doing it because
they love kids. I mean, it's so ironic that they say protect trans kids, but what they're doing to these kids is chopping off their body parts, stopping their puberty, putting them on wrong sex hormones.
Yeah.
It's anything but protecting kids. It's the opposite.
Yeah.
Everything is the polar opposite of what they say.
What does North Korea do? I think North Korea teaches the children that he's some type of godly figure that was appointed down, you know, as some type of, what is it, a supreme ruler, or is that China or something like that? But I think with North Korea, there's a whole backstory of fable mythology backstory of how you know, supernatural he is as a ruler. And, you know, you look at the Ayatollah, he's what's his words, a supreme leader. So he's some type of appointed by a godly figure that he is ruling the country. He has the words, he has the law at his speech.
All cults do that as well.
So they raise the children in the schools to believe that. So the kids aren't born believing that. They're having it shoved down their neck. And to my mind, that's coercion. And I heard that also raised in a conversation recently, and they termed it entrapment. And I'm wondering, do we have anything like that in Australia, in law, where force-feeding this belief into children, consistently raising it, consistently having their flags and their quizzes and their booklets, reinforcing it through, for example, university. So when you are doing a course, you can't go on to the next subject until you have done, in some courses, this is fact, until you have done a diversity quiz where you have answered those questions appropriately. So it's reinforcing. To my mind, that's entrapment. So I don't know if we have that.
But I had this when I was at uni, but I didn't think anything of it. This was back in 2016. And I was writing an essay. This is so frustrating to me because I was writing an essay in our sexualities course, and the title was something about pathologization of some aspect of sexuality, because obviously homosexuality used to be in the DSM and it was seen as a mental illness. And I think I had peaked by then, or I was peaking, and I was reading Heather Brunskill-Evans's book. I don't know if you've read it. It's awesome. It's about the travesty of the concept of the trans child. And I was reading that, and I wrote my essay with referencing heavily on that. And even in my introduction, I wrote a definition of what cis meant and what trans meant. And I just thought that was totally normal. Even though I was thinking about how wrong it was to treat children like this, I still accepted the term cis. So that's how deep the cult thinking goes with people who think that people who don't agree with what's going on and I've got people in my family who still consider themselves cis, but they still agree with what I'm saying, but still argue the point that, well, you know, I am cis.
Oh God.
It's like they've been desensitized.
This is.
Yes.
It's a short space of time.
So how can you be a subcategory of your own sex? You can't.
You're not thinking about it, are you? You're literally parking your brain at the door. You're not thinking that deeply about it.
Yeah,
that's such a good description. And it's just reinforced over and over and over. You won't get your funding. You won't be able to pass on and enroll in this course. You can't apply for this job until you've done a DEI statement, a diversity statement. So forget your qualifications and your effort and your experience. If you don't submit an appropriate DEI statement, ticking all your boxes, you're not going to get in. You're not going to get that role. You're not going to get that promotion. So DEI is now fully inserted into how you can progress, how you can actually get into the workplace, how you can progress, how you can get funding, how, you know, and it in effect stops all free speech and stops free gatherings. Look at what's happening to the lesbian community, just reinforcing that no, you don't have a right. The reality of sex and sex class has been extinguished under DEI, under the trans.
People don't understand that when I talk to people. There are literally no female-only spaces left.
Yeah, there's none.
In Queensland, definitely, and other parts of Australia and other parts of the world. There are literally no female-only spaces.
And you know what is really wrong with the Queensland government is, like, when the hate speech laws came in on the 29th of April, the public wasn't told anything about it. That risk now if they say the wrong thing, $10,800 fine and or 3 years in prison. So, and then with sex self-ID, they haven't told any women. We know, but how many women don't know that men can freely go to any woman's space and they just have to walk in and change nothing about themselves and go, and if they're questioned, well, that could be considered hateful, so they could fall foul of the hate speech laws. Or, you know, you can't ask them for their birth certificate to see that their birth marker was changed. So people don't know.
No, they don't. They don't. And I'll give an example. So people don't even know what the word autogynephile means still. And I'm not surprised by that. And it's certainly not a criticism of women. I did not know what autogynephile meant. It was a new word to me. This time 12 months ago was when I learned about that. So I've led most of my life.
Anybody who doesn't know, Google autogynephile right now if you don't know what that means.
Or a furry.
Spell it.
A furry. I didn't know what that was.
Can we just the spelling autogynephile, just so if people are going to Google it, because I know when I first heard about it, I went, what? So it's AUTOGYNEPHILE.
I'll put it on the screen in bold letters, neon, glitter, rainbows,
fireworks going on.
So on self-ID, what was the date that came into effect? It's just happened, hasn't it?
The hate speech laws, sex self-ID comes in on the 24th of June.
Oh, it's June. It's not May, so it's June. Yes. No, they don't. And I know of an organisation where an AGP has appeared within the organisation, and I was relayed one story of a lady, quite a few, had become a little distressed at realising that the reality is hitting home now, that it's not just something that you hear about, oh, there's, whisper, there's men in women's prisons. Oh, well, that's not affecting you now, is it? So they just, oh, that's an awful thing. But then they go on with their day and they think, well, that must be just a niche little thing. Or, they might have heard a whisper that there's men in women's refuges, although I don't think most women realise that. I really don't think most women realise that women going through trauma and fear for their life and fear for their children's lives are not able to find refuge anywhere, because a lot of these places are operating under the radar, some of them, because they're not getting government funding. And if the trans find out about them, they will try and get them shut down.
And also, even worse are the blokes who are taking those jobs and roles and not telling, I don't know how no one noticed, but the guy who was the head of Edinburgh Rape Crisis.
I am late to my trans activism, and most of my activism has always been about migrant women and no recourse public funds. So I'm still learning the language and where people are in their thinking, but I have the privilege of being a woman who passes. So, and I use that to my advantage, because that has given me access to spaces and to people who normally would not would not all trans people would have that access. So I use that effectively. Yeah, and I think I use my personality, which of course not everyone has, a charming personality. I use that to my advantage. I hope that helped. I hope I answered your question.
He's a dude who pretends that he's a woman, and you know, how many times have we heard men getting off on women's rape stories?
It's a category of porn, isn't it?
Yeah, of course, well, probably one of the most popular.
And I think they actually fantasize themselves about being a victim and being assaulted themselves, as if that is, because it gives them even more victimhood, you know, and it's all about being a victim, isn't it?
But also which women are using our services. It's mostly white, middle class, able-bodied women who are using rape crisis services. It is much more harder, and for us to, and there are many ways of saying this, but we are not seeing brown, black, disabled women use our services in the way that they should. So we are still a very white service. And if your energy is consumed with raising money and the people who are supposed to go out into the community, and if you are I am a brown migrant trans woman who leads the center, but I've only been there for 6 months, but this is a very white organization. So if you're spending all your energy in surviving as an organization, you then neglect those who need your services the most, who are furthest away from justice, from healing, and those are people who are marginalized, and that's the reality.
And hasn't the Cass report totally napalmed that little lie out of existence, that they're not at a higher risk than any other society? I mean, a lot of them have got issues.
They're men that say they're women have got less risk of being attacked than just a man who knows and says he's a man.
I think a good deal of percentage of the ones who are actually work in the sex.
Yeah.
You know, I shouldn't say work. I do not like to use that term when it comes to sex, but that's what they are doing.
Can I just go back to what Leah was saying? So you were saying this man, Leah, in Scotland was the head of a crisis center?
Edinburgh Rape Crisis. His name is Middrall, I think.
And what did he do?
He took the job of the head of this rape crisis centre.
Yeah.
And he was on the podcast called The Guilty Feminist a couple of years ago.
And I wasn't even sure whether I would have been hired if they had known that I was trans.
There are many people who are concerned that if trans women can self-identify and come into a refuge, that may trigger all sorts of things in cis women. Have you come up against this?
Yes, I have, around this issue. Sexual violence happens to bigoted people as well. And, it is not a discerning crime. But these spaces are also for you. But if you bring unacceptable beliefs that are discriminatory in nature, we will begin to work with you on your journey of recovery from trauma. But please also expect to be challenged on your prejudices. But if you have to reframe your trauma, I think you also have to reframe your relationship with prejudice.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
And he didn't have a gender recognition certificate, not that matters anyway.
Yeah.
And I mean, these blokes will infiltrate anywhere. It's wherever water flows, they will find a way.
Absolutely. And what the policies in your workplace. So I encourage everyone who is in a workplace to become familiar, particularly large organizations, become familiar, do a little bit of investigation yourself on what the policies are, because with self-ID that has come in, they are writing policies now that are exactly that. You will be punished. So if you do not, in some policies that are in existence now in Australia, if you do not comply and use the person's pronoun I can't even think of an occasion when I would use a pronoun in speech. I just call the person their name. So I think the whole thing is just ridiculous and should just be extracted out of all policy for multiple reasons. But I just can't even think of an occasion when I would use
it's
a
all
pronoun.
about controlling how someone talks about you
Oh,
when
it's
you're not even
100%.
there.
So if you don't,
narcissism.
It's classed then as bullying. So then that would be going onto your code of conduct in the workplace, and bang, you're out. You know, so
yeah, the interesting thing is also, like, we find the term cis highly offensive, but they insist on calling us cis, even though we're really offended by that term. And oh, that's just too bad. You just have to live with it. But don't you dare use the wrong pronoun for me. And
I find the term trans women, it just makes my skin crawl that the word woman is in any way associated with men. And I like men, but there's nothing about women, that not one tiny, tiny little speck of our being has anything to do with men. So just we reclaim this word. So when we say women, when women say women, we mean women. There is no mistaking. When we say gender, we mean male or female. That's it. There's no in between. There's just none. So I would like to see something like what I think it's Iowa has just done. And I invite any politicians in Australia or those wanting to get into Parliament and do something about this, because we really, really want you to stand up. There are rolling elections coming up. We want people to stand up and say enough is enough. If it hasn't already hit your workplace, it is going to. It's going to hit you in the face very, very soon, either you or somebody you love. It's going to, yes.
If there were any organisation that hasn't been touched by this now, I would imagine there are some organisations and they don't believe in it and they've got the luxury of not having to do it. But I think any organisation where the possibility of being captured has been captured, I think it would have been done by now, because Australia is so embedded in this. Like 2 years ago, it wasn't.
No,
but it
was as soon as the government changed, the policies ramped up, and now it's on steroids. So it's just like the little machines, like the duck under the water with the legs going. They are pumping out as many changes in every direction, like little fireworks going off, that they possibly can, shoving it through. So it's ingrained into policies and scholarships and grants and positions and hiring as much as possible. And then they get these people into these positions of power, and they don't just come in at the bottom level. They are putting them into judiciary, into military, all over the place. But they are most concerning to me is the schools and our universities. So I would like to invite anybody who is wanting to stand up and display their integrity, and that Australian, what has built Australia is, we do stand up when it matters. We're very easygoing, but we do stand up, and we've got such diversity in our country of knowledge and experience and creativity. We've got that already. So we don't need to be dividing our people. We need to be celebrating our people. So I invite you to look at this report that has been tabled in, I think it's Iowa. I think that's where it is. And what they've done is they've done an analysis of universities, state universities over there. And they've gone through the DEI and the effect on these universities, and the damaging effect on everything concerned with those universities. So the end result is they've tabled a bill to remove all of it, remove all DEI positions. Imagine the savings. How much is that being spent on money that can go towards disability, domestic violence, children's causes, hospitals, roads, anything? How much money is being spent on diversity positions? And so a huge saving straight away. I think it would be eye-watering if we actually looked at that figure.
In Queensland universities, the fees that they have to pay each year, every student has to pay $113 each. So it can be fed into DEI, but we all know that DEI really, in those institutions, is also always about gender ideology. So when you think 113, I'm pretty sure it's over $100. I think it's $100.
Yes, the student services fee is going directly towards the DEI causes, trans causes. And let's just take a step back with where these policies and who is designing them. So we've got the WPATH, then OzPath in Australia. They carbon copy of what WPATH has, and then ACON. Now, these are the organisations that are advising the training modules and the policy for staff and the information that's coming out.
And can we just mention that earlier this year we were talking about the survey that was given to staff in Services Australia and other government departments. Now, where was I going with that? Oh, that's right, ACON. And on the survey, the government was collecting data to give to ACON. So that's how deeply embedded, like you said, Bella.
Oh, that can be.
We'll take it out of
Bella. That's how deeply embedded these lobby groups are in government and organisations, that the government would actually collect data to give to a lobby group.
Absolutely. And it's even a little more horrifying of recent incidents where a booklet was handed out in a large organisation by a staff member of the organisation, and it was designed for children of the organisation. So on one page it would have adult terms.
You mean children of the people that work for that organisation?
Yes. So just picture this and just consider whether, I'm totally off the mark here, whether this breaches any concerns for you, or do you feel that it may be breaching the organisation's duty of care and existing laws? So I'll just frame the scenario. Within this booklet had adult terms that I have never heard of before. For example, they have terms like aromantic, abrosexual, coy gender, demi-romantic, aroace, demisexual, grey romantic.
Grey romantic.
Ambient.
What's the flag for grey romantic?
Grey.
Cast gender. What is cast gender, guys? Have you heard of that one before? Cast gender. CASSGENDER. Oh, here's one. Trixic.
Well, what's the answer? What is cast gender?
Let's see if it's got answers.
I'm going to look it up.
I think you're going to have to.
Do you know what cast gender and cast pronouns are? Cast gender is when an individual doesn't really care about their gender. It's not really important to them, so they don't want to label it. However, they still want to have a community and they still want to be able to describe their feeling, even if they don't have a feeling towards gender, aka cast gender. Cast gender was coined in 2014 via Tumblr. So if you're cast gender, what pronouns can you use? Well, cast gender individuals can use whatever pronouns they want, but some individuals also don't care about pronouns in the same way they don't care about gender, aka cast pronoun. Those who use cast pronouns don't care about pronouns. They don't feel any sort of way towards pronouns. They're kind of indifferent towards pronouns. So you can use whatever pronouns you want to refer to them, and they will use whatever pronouns they want to use to refer to themselves. This includes gendered and non-gendered pronouns and neo-pronouns as well.
So it goes on and on and on, all these things that I've never heard of before. And you know, I've been around for a fair while now. And if it's new to you too, Sue, between us, we clock up a few years. So we've either been living under a rock or these are made up bullshit terms.
And usually young teenage girls, or they just keep adding, don't they?
Yeah, so this was in a designed for, you know, find the words in one of those, you know, where you have all the letters in a big box thing, like a crossword with all the letters, and you've got to find the words. Okay, so words that we've never heard of before. And then on the other page of this, right beside it, on the other page of this booklet, is a colour by numbers. So what age group of children do colour by numbers? I'm going to say that that's probably kindy, grade one-ish, grade, you know, sort of age group, would we say? And so we're talking about little kids, right, who still use colouring in and crayon, right? And then on the other side, they've got this word mismatch of horror things that are only referring to a person's sexual activity. So what they're saying is, I identify as this, and I identify this way because that's how I engage sexually. I don't think these two things should be together in the one paper handed out in a organisation. If this was a booklet, say from the Watchtower, Scientology, a men's rights group, a woman's, well, see, we wouldn't have any sexual terms in there. I don't even know of an organisation that identifies itself along the lines of sexual activity, because that's how it appears to me. And we're dealing with information where kids aren't even sexually aware. That's not even something where their mind has gone to, you know, they're nowhere near puberty. So in my mind, this is highly wrong and offensive and profound coercive child abuse. It is the Pied Piper.
There was that instant, I think it was last month, of a 10-year-old boy up in Cairns that was accused of sexual assault of a 24-year-old Italian tourist.
Yes.
So if we're sexualising kids from a very, very early age, it's horrific, isn't it? They should be kids. None of this should be coming into their sphere at all.
No, it's...
What gender ideology is saying to every Australian mum and dad is that your mother, your sister, your best friend, your wife, your daughter, your niece has zero rights in Australia to take their clothes off in private, away from the gaze of men who perpetrate, what is it, about 98% of sexual assault? Is that right? Something along those lines. It's in the 90s anyway. Is that right?
Yeah, that's what I've seen.
Something like that. So no rights whatsoever. And our government under they still have the existing Attorney General Dreyfus, abhorrent man, enemy of every woman in Australia. Any man, regardless of whether he is a pedophile, autogynephile, sexual assault perpetrator, repeated sexual assault perpetrator, violent assault history, any man can go into any space of a woman and I beg your pardon, and approach, be near, look at, gaze at, follow into a space. You know, how many women have been stalked, have felt uncomfortable by a man in their vicinity. And the pushback of, oh, you know, most assaults are within a couple. Yeah, that may be true, or an ex-partner. That may be true, but there's a damn lot that are just random sexual assaults or sexual violent attacks.
What about the bloke in California, the woman who's come out and talked about how she's been raped by a bloke? This guy was arrested in 1990 for involvement in the gunpoint, kidnapping, robbery and sexual assault of 2 women. Sentenced to 10 years in prison. Arrested when he came out again and convicted of the robbery of a jewellery store, sentenced to 25 years. Now identifies as a trans woman, has had no surgery or any intention. Not that it matters, but just saying. In September of 2020, the Californian governor, Gavin Newsom, another woman hater, signed the Transgender Respect, Agency and Dignity Act to allow incarcerated trans and non-binary and intersex people to be housed in a manner consistent with their gender identity. And it was around that time that condoms were fitted in women's prisons.
There was another, it must be a different example then. Just recently, there was a woman raped in a prison and he was guilty of multiple rapes of children.
Yes.
And it was over in America, and like a Senate estimates type situation where these male politicians are asking this woman about this man being put in with women when he's been convicted of so many assaults.
I think she was a judge, was she? Was she a judge, I think?
This case involves a male defendant who raped a 9-year-old boy. Was he guilty of that?
Yes, the petitioner pled guilty to that.
Okay, so he raped a 9-year-old boy. He also raped a 17-year-old girl. Was he guilty of that?
He pled guilty. The petitioner pled guilty to that crime as well.
So was he guilty?
I hope so, because she pled guilty to it.
He was a he when he did this.
That's correct.
And also criminal deviant conduct, which the record doesn't disclose what that was exactly. Then, after serving in prison, Mr. McLean was released for parole, but then violated the terms of parole by having internet and was sent back to prison. 1 year after being released again, he was convicted of having child pornography. Is that correct?
I'm unclear on exactly the time frame that you're at, but the petitioner was convicted of distributing child pornography.
Child pornography that was images of adults violently raping children.
Abhorrent conduct.
Okay.
For which there are real victims.
And this individual, 6'2", biologically a man. A minute ago, you said that when this man decided that he was a she, you said this individual was, quote, I wrote it down, sober and entirely a female. That phrase struck me as remarkable. Did this individual have male genitalia?
I think what I said, or at least what
that is a verbatim quote, entirely a female.
Sorry, what I meant to say was hormonally a female.
Okay, but that's not entirely. Did this individual have male genitalia?
Yes.
So you took a 6'2" serial rapist, serial child rapist with male genitalia, and he said, you know, I'd like to be in a women's prison. And your answer was, that sounds great to me. Let me ask you something. The other women in that prison, do they have any rights?
Is that a question you're asking me?
Yes, the other women in that prison, do they have any rights?
Of course.
Do they have the right not to have a 6'2" man who is a repeat serial rapist put in as their cellmate?
Senator Cruz, I considered the facts presented to me, and I reached a decision based on what the law is.
I asked you a question. Do they have a right not to have a 6'2" man who is a serial rapist put in as their cellmate? Do those women have a right to that?
Every person who's incarcerated has the right to be safe in their space.
But you didn't think so. You didn't think so. And in fact, I'm going to give some quotes from your order because Senator Kennedy is right. This is not a judge's order. This is a political activist. By the way, The beginning of your order says, at birth, people are typically assigned a gender. I got to say that would astonish a lot of Americans. A lot of Americans think you go to the hospital, a baby is born, and congratulations, you have a little boy, a little girl. The assigned a gender, I know you went to Brown, but it sounds like it's in a college faculty lounge with no bearing on reality. The Bureau of Prison argued what I'm saying right now, that if you put this person in a female prison, there will be a risk of sexual assault to the women. And you know what you did? You said you didn't care about the women. I'm going to quote what you wrote. You wrote, quote, "The Bureau of Prisons claim penological interest in protecting female prisoners from sexual violence and trauma. This interest is legitimate," that's kind of you to say, "but there are no signs that petitioner is at risk of reoffending. The record is devoid of evidence of incidents of violence or assault during petitioner's incarceration when she was the perpetrator, only the victim. A theoretical risk of sexual assault by the prisoner without more cannot support the BOP's position. No evidence, theoretical." Have you dealt, in what universe is someone who is a serial repeat child rapist not at a risk of reoffending?
Senator, as I do in every case.
Okay, I know you've been told to repeat the line, "I follow the law." I asked a question. In what universe is someone who is a serial repeat child rapist not at risk of reoffending?
Sir, I looked at the facts that were before me in this case. All of the evidence, including the statements of every warden who had supervised this petitioner.
You also wrote, "The BOP also posits that permitting petitioner to live among women will be traumatizing and possibly dangerous to them. This concern is overblown." I have to say, if I were the father of one of those women, and you decided that my daughter's cellmate was going to be a 6'2" man who over and over and over again committed violent sexual assault, I would say the entire justice system is absurd, and it is clear on your record your political ideology matters a heck of a lot more than the rights of those women that you endangered.
Yeah, what about these women in prison's rights? Why don't people care about women in prison? When people say to me, "Why do you care about it, Leah, so much? Why are you wasting your time on this?" This is you don't. We could be put in fucking prison. We don't know. Like, anyone could be put in prison.
I was told those exact wording in the last week.
I think
when it was the awareness of what was happening in the workplaces was discussed within a couple of women, and it was raised with this one lovely man, I must say, a very, very personable, likable, well-respected man. And he just doesn't get it. That was exactly his response. Why do we care? Why make a big deal about it? Why not just do your work and not worry about it?
Throughout history, you could say all those people fought for our rights with everything. Like the working day used to be 12 hours. It was 7 days a week that you worked. Why did people fight for it? Because they cared. Why do people think it has to affect you directly before you start caring?
This does affect us directly, though. Just even standing trying to do our speaker's corner, we had blokes trying to stop talking. Like, this does affect us directly.
Yeah, it does.
It everyone. Now we have 0 single-sex spaces in Queensland. This affects everybody.
But
everybody.
The majority of them, until they're confronted by it themselves and disadvantaged, don't give a shit about other people.
I think they just don't really, the women don't really believe it's impacting them or their children. I had one man say this week to me that his child's all right because they're going to a Catholic school. Now, let's just, Catholic schools still get government funding. So unless they're going to fund themselves totally, and I don't know if they're going to be able to avoid everything out of the curriculum that's being enforced by the government, particularly when they're making policies that make it a criminal offence if you don't affirm somebody's pronoun or make-believe fantasy fetish gender. If they're going to force people to lie, it's only going to be when everybody goes, oh, well, but no. You know, when they finally go, the truth matters, that what we want our children taught the truth, and push back on that about, well, the truth is subjective. Big fat BS. Big fat BS. There's man and there's women. That is a truth that is not going away. Nobody has ever been able to change their sex. It's a big fat lie. There is so much evidence about all the different reasons why people have trauma over feeling uncomfortable in their body, about the social contagion for the little girls, about the autogynephiles, about the effect of porn and the internet on why this explosion is happening. The evidence is just overwhelming. We will not lie. We will never lie.
The comfort of men, like that, that's Tickle versus Giggle case, and that man who claims he's a woman. And if you go back a few years ago, and he was on SBS and he was talking about how being in the men's changing room made him feel uncomfortable.
Roxy, you're a transgender woman from regional New South Wales. You played hockey for 10 years from when you were 16 years old, but you stopped when you were 26. Why?
Something didn't feel quite right, and it has taken me decades longer to look back and try and dissect that and understand that I really didn't like being in the male changing rooms. I felt really uncomfortable there. I didn't like the smells or the sounds.
Therefore, women have to be uncomfortable because a man feels uncomfortable
with other men.
Yeah.
How does that become a woman's problem? You know, you make a perfect example. Why is that a woman's problem? As soon as you put a bit of
lipstick on, grow your hair long, then it's a woman's problem.
Yeah. It's got nothing to do with women, men, and how they want to get off, how they feel about themselves, and how they feel around other men has zero to do with women. Zero.
And the fact that we have a Minister for Women, Shannon Fentiman, most incompetent Minister for Women I think there must have ever been, who doesn't understand what a woman is.
Yeah.
How can
I'd love to strap it to a lie detector.
How can this be real?
I would love to compel these politicians who stand up there and say this BS to sit on a lie detector. Come on, cough it up.
Yeah,
you really believe it?
No one really believes that.
No one believes it. It's all this be kind bullshit. Well, it's not kind to force children to lie, to bring up liars. We don't teach our children to lie. It's not kind to give places in companies, in teams, in sports to people who haven't earned that position through damn hard work and application of trying to be the best in that area. It's not kind to do that. It's a lie. It's not kind to tell a schizophrenic that their delusions are real.
Yeah, they want to be kind to men, you know, not upset their feelings because they think they're women. So let's all be kind to the men and just stuff the women. With sports, all these women, elite athletes that have worked for years and years and years to get to the level that they're at. And then you get a man that decides he'll say he's a woman, goes into a sport, doesn't even have to, because of his biological advantage, doesn't even need to try hard to be number one. It is just so all the opportunities being taken from women, and we've got to be kind to these men.
Yeah.
And completely disregard what women have put in to these sports. And then you get a lot of people go, oh, well, women, they're just weak then, aren't they? No, it's a biological difference. You wouldn't see a man, like what man could really take giving birth? They couldn't even deal with it, you know, if they had endometriosis or, you know, stuff like that. Women have strength to deal with those issues, like to give birth. Leah, you just did that. You didn't have a very good experience. Imagine a man doing that. They couldn't do it. So saying that women in sports a week, it's just bullshit. It's just, you've got to consider biological differences.
You do. And I think it's really important for Australians to know that we're a mixed bag of women in where we've come from in life, our expertise, our family situations, and which way we might have been inclined to vote over the years. What unites us is safeguarding and our sex. That's what unites us, and care for children, the safety of children. But what's important and what is a fact is Australians have to know who forced this on Australian girls and women. And the answer to that is the Labor Party and the Greens. So when you have these organisations standing up and saying, we care about women, we care about women's opportunities, we care about providing services for victims of domestic violence, we care about giving equal opportunities to women and girls in sports and the workplace. That is a bold-faced lie.
Yeah.
And when women speak up and when they object, they lose funding, they lose opportunities. Look at the team where girls or women have not played against them, and then they've been suspended, those players have been suspended. That is that's sex discrimination, right? The laws are punishing women, and so they are using the laws that were built to protect us. They are now using that as a weapon to punish girls and women. That's not being kind. That's being a totalitarian government policies forced on these sporting and organisations to comply. And I just want to say that when people speak up, this Attorney General, Mark Dreyfus, who was played a major role in removing sex and inserting gender into the Sex Discrimination Act of 2013. He also has played a major role in releasing pedophiles, rapists, and goodness knows murderers and criminals into the Australian community. And he also now is pursuing whistleblowers. So he is pursuing the whistleblowers in government organisations that make the government look bad, that represent the government in a bad light. So what's the whole point of having a whistleblower the process, to protect people who see discrimination and breaches of law in large organisations and in government, if they have zero protections? So where does that leave women and girls in relation to gender ideology? Nowhere to go. So Australians have to be aware. Who brought this in? It was Labor and the Greens. I would never believe another word that came out of any representative mouth that cannot tell the truth, that wants our children to lie and has no protections, zero protections for your daughters, for your mothers, for your wives, zero protections in Australia.
Yeah, well, I for one am glad that I'm not being quiet about this, and at least my daughter will see in the future that I did something to try and stop this.
We will stop.
I'm so happy as well that there are women like you two who show up and speak out.
Yeah, and there's more and more.
There are.
I've been involved only 2 years. I've only known just over 2 years and seen the growth of people that are more aware now and opposed to it. But there's still that fear because of losing their jobs.
Absolutely. And, I with regards to the trans and how self-ID has given us nowhere to go, no safe spaces, I think Australians, our childhood and generation, it wasn't perfect, but it was safer than what is in government law, legislation and policy now. It was safer. We had designated spaces in society. So we have not progressed since Labor and the Greens removed these protections. We have gone back decades and decades in safeguarding.
And there was also that social norm of if you were in a women's toilet or changing room and a dude did come in, that it was just normal that you would tell him to fuck off.
Yeah,
and all the women in that space would have each other's back in knowing that, no, that dude shouldn't be in here. Now, he comes in wearing a dress, or not, maybe not even wearing a dress, not even lipstick. He just comes in and says, but I'm a woman.
Mm-hmm.
The women are in the wrong for telling him to get out. It's absolutely crazy. I can't believe that this is real. I just can't believe that we are living through this in 2024.
If you're in a situation where a man comes in and starts, is naked or whatever, and you find his behaviour is inappropriate, then you ring the police.
Mm.
So by the time the police get there, he's gone.
Mm.
So this bullshit that all you have to do is ring the police, it's crazy. At least they knew those were off limits. But even say it's in a park, even men that would see a man go into a women's toilet, a red flag would be raised, and they'd probably go there, or they'd ring the police or whatever.
Yeah.
You just expected, okay, well, that's normal. He's allowed to go into that toilet. There was that instance in Brisbane, a friend of mine, her granddaughter, her mother, so she's only 5, took her to the toilet at school and the little girls' bathroom or toilets, and she took her in there, and one of the stalls were occupied, and out came a man. So all the toilets, wasn't a teacher, a tradie. So he probably identifies as a little girl.
Or he was just a pervert who wanted to go into the girls' toilet.
Yeah,
and we're not even allowed to make to do about it, because we are in the wrong.
The only thing they could get him on is that he shouldn't have been in the school grounds, or because he's not a teacher. But as far as he won't be, he's a pervert, he's a pedophile, he was looking for an opportunity. It'll be, no, he's entitled to. We've seen men that identify as toddlers or 13, as we've seen in Canada. So not only can they identify as a female, they can identify as a girl.
Yes, they can. Yes.
Little bear, and this is Ella is right there, and that's Strawberry. You guys know Strawberry because you saw him before already. A little fairy, a little ballerina fairy.
And they can be teachers, so they can go in there if they're a man, and as you say, they don't have to do anything. But I mean, even more horrific is if they do want to put on the clown costume and the fake boobs and the scary clown ridiculous appearance, and then go and try and get all their accolades in front of a class and give me more affirmation, give me more attention, affirm me all day long in front of the class, and spew their fetish rubbish all over our beautiful, beautiful children. That's abhorrent. There should be a code of conduct in schools and universities that absolute no personal belief is brought into that classroom. No political and no personal belief. They have a strict curriculum that they must adhere to. No teaching of hatred, no teaching of religious gender, because it's just a belief.
My name's Teacher Green, and something I like about my classroom is that my students built the trans flag last year. We have the pleasure of reading a book called Melissa about a transgender 4th grade girl, and it was very impactful for all of us. Afterwards, we built the trans flag using the shapes of our hands.
I work with preschool age children, about 3 to 4 years old. I guess my boss sent out an email to like the staff and the parents of my room, letting them know that I'm trans and like what pronouns I identify with and stuff. My coworker is great. She has never misgendered me. And when I'm in different rooms, some of the kids will ask me like, are you a boy or a girl? Because my hair is kind of like a mid-length, but it's short enough that it applies to the kids' logic of like boys have short hair and girls have long hair kind of thing. I've actually had kids correct other kids on my pronouns, saying that he's not a she, he's a boy, and like correct other kids. It's so cute.
My partner is a public middle school teacher. They were moving some tables and chairs around with their class. My partner goes, okay, I need some big strong boys to help me move these tables. You, and you. And picked the trans kids, picked the trans boys in the class. Are these big kids? No. Are they necessarily strong? Not really. But the looks on their faces to have their teacher just like casually affirm their gender and to be like, hey, I need some boys to move some tables. You are a boy. Please come move this table. It gives me chills every time.
So my pronouns are he, they. This is my pride flag, Progress 2.0. I think pronouns are really important because
if I could just say one last thing, and that is to all of our women and girls out there, with self-ID officially coming in June, as we touched on earlier, it will affect you or somebody that you love in the near future. It will affect you, whether it's going to be through school, your sporting organisation, where you work, somewhere that you visit. It will affect you. Mm. So please, if you have any concerns, please shoot us, contact us, shoot us a message somehow, get informed. And if you are able to, please stand up. Please stand up, because we need more women and men, good men, men who would never enter a woman's space, and that is the majority of men. We do need to stand up now. This has to stop.
Mm. Well, we had a few men at Speaker's Corner last week, and, it's really good to have men support this, because they've all got mothers, wives, daughters, they don't want to see this happening either.
Mm. No. And again, always remember who brought this in, who inflicted this on the women and girls of Australia throughout our schools, our medical institutions, our universities and our government agencies. Who did this? Mark Dreyfus, the Labor Party and the Greens. So think of that as we approach the next elections, and really canvass the candidates. Ask them, will they remove DEI? Will they put forward policies to remove DEI and all references to gender ideology? And will they reinstate sex-based policy in every section of society? Mm-hmm. If they and ah, they are not the one for you. There's no time. And if they push back, if you hear be kind, if you hear diversity, run. Do not give that person your vote. It will just get worse. It will get worse.
Yeah. All right. Well, on that note, see you next time.
Bye.